Robert adjusted his welding torch, the blue flame casting dancing shadows across the cargo bay of the orbital station. 3 years had passed since the Epsilon Colony massacre. 3 years since the Krillian raiders had taken everything from him. His wife, his daughter, his parents, all gone in a single night of fire and screams. Now he existed in the cold embrace of space, fixing ships and avoiding anything that might remind him what it felt like to care. Engineer Robert. The station AI chimed. Incoming vessel requesting emergency docking. Species, Draconian. Vessel condition, critical. Robert sighed. The Draconians were a proud species, massive reptilian beings who controlled 3 sectors and rarely asked anyone for help. Permission granted. Direct them to Base 7. 20 minutes later, Robert stood before a sight that made his breath catch. The Draconian ship was beautiful even in ruin. Organic metal that seemed to breathe, now torn and scorched. A single Draconian emerged, scales shimmering gold and crimson, easily 4 meters tall. She clutched something against her chest. Human engineer, she rumbled, her voice like distant thunder. I am Syrax. I need help. The pride in her voice cracked on the last word. Robert noticed the green blood seeping between her claws. You're injured. Not for me. She opened her arms slightly, revealing an egg no larger than a human head, its shell fractured, pieces missing. My daughter. The raiders attacked our nesting ship. Everyone else. Her golden eyes closed. Please. Humans are known for their stubborn refusal to accept the impossible. Robert felt something twist in his chest, something he'd thought long dead. He stepped forward. Bring her to my workshop. For 6 days, Robert didn't sleep. He studied Draconian biology through texts Syrax provided, built an environmental chamber from spare parts, and created a nutrient solution from materials he'd normally use for ship repairs. Syrax watched in silence. Growing weaker from her own wounds, she refused to treat. Why do you do this? She asked on the 4th day. We are not allies. My people have nothing to offer you. Robert didn't look up from his calculations. I've got nothing better to do. But that wasn't true, and they both knew it. On the 7th day, the egg hatched. The hatchling was the size of a house cat, scales like liquid silver, with eyes that held the depth of nebulas. She looked at Robert with those ancient yet newborn eyes and made a sound like wind chimes. She's imprinting, Syrax whispered, tears streaming down her scaled face. Robert, she thinks you're her parent. No, Robert said quickly. No, you're her mother. The hatchling stumbled toward him on unsteady legs, chirping insistently. When she reached him, she climbed up his coveralls and nestled against his neck, purring like an engine. Syrax smiled sadly. Draconian young choose their primary bond. She has chosen you. I can't, Robert said, but his hands had already moved to support the tiny creature. I'm not good at this anymore. You saved her life. I fix things. It's what I do. Yes, Syrax agreed. You do. Robert named her Elsa, after his daughter. He told himself it was temporary, that once Syrax healed, they would leave and he'd go back to his comfortable numbness. But Elsa had other plans. She followed him everywhere, learning human words before Draconian ones. When he worked, she'd sit on his shoulder, her tail curled around his arm, asking endless questions in her chiming voice. Why blue flame hot? Why stars far? Why Robert sad sometimes? That last question broke something in him. I lost my family, he told her one night, the words coming easier in the dark. Bad people took them away. Elsa was quiet for a moment, then pressed her small head against his cheek. Robert not lost. Robert right here. Elsa right here. We family now. Syrax recovered slowly, and with her health came news from the Draconian Council. They'd heard of the human who'd saved a royal hatchling. Because of course Syrax was royalty, she'd just forgotten to mention that detail. They wanted to offer Robert citizenship, titles, wealth. I just want to be left alone, Robert told Syrax. And Elsa? Syrax asked gently. Robert looked at the hatchling, who was currently trying to help by organizing his tools in order of shininess rather than function. His chest felt tight. She deserves better than a broken human in a repair bay. She deserves her choice, Syrax countered. As do you, Robert. You've been punishing yourself for surviving. But guilt is not honor. Living is not betraying them. That night, Elsa crawled into Robert's bunk, something she'd started doing when she sensed his nightmares coming. "Robert, my favorite human," she declared sleepily. "Only human, but still favorite." Robert laughed, the sound rusty but real. "You're my favorite dragon." "Only dragon." Doesn't make it less true. The Draconian delegation arrived the next week with ceremony and fanfare that made Robert uncomfortable. But when they tried to discuss terms, Elsa interrupted. "Robert stays with Elsa," she announced with surprising authority for a being barely 3 weeks old. "Elsa decree it. Royal decree." The delegation looked scandalized. Syrax looked amused. Robert felt something warm unfold in his chest. "Your Majesty," the head delegate addressed Syrax stiffly, "the hatchling cannot simply decree." "Actually," Syrax interrupted, "as her mother and queen regent until her majority, I support this decree. Robert has proven himself family." "That is the end of discussion." Later, Robert asked, "Why didn't you tell me you were a queen?" Syrax's eyes gleamed with humor. "You treated me as a mother seeking help for her child. Would you have done differently knowing my title?" "No." "Exactly." Robert's workshop became home to an unusual family. He taught Elsa about engineering, while Syrax taught her draconian history. Elsa taught them both about joy, about second chances, about how love doesn't replace what was lost but grows alongside the grief. On the anniversary of the Epsilon massacre, Robert found Elsa sitting quietly beside a small memorial he'd built. "Tell me about them," she said softly, and he did. He told her about his daughter Sarah's laugh, about his wife Maria's terrible cooking, about his father's awful jokes. And it hurt, but it was a clean hurt, like lancing a wound so it could finally heal. When he finished, Elsa leaned against him. "They'd be proud of you, Robert. You saved me. You saved yourself. That's very brave." "You saved me too, little one," he whispered. "Then we saved each other," Elsa decided with the simple wisdom of the young. "That's what families do." Robert looked up at the stars, at the vast darkness that had once felt so cold. Now it felt full of possibility. He had a dragon daughter who thought shiny wrenches were treasures, a queen who'd become an unlikely friend, and a heart that had learned to beat again. Sometimes salvation comes not in forgetting the past, but in having the courage to build a future anyway. Sometimes family isn't who you were born with, but who chooses to stay. And sometimes, the universe sends you a dragon hatchling who calls you her favorite human, and that's enough to make you believe in living again.